and today's movie review is of the 1990 film Dances with Wolves. Before I say another word about this film, I'm just going to tell you that I was hesitant to do a review of this movie because it is so iconic, it is so famous, all the Academy Awards, yada yada yada, and I don't know, it's just like major films kind of scare me when it comes to reviews because I'm sure there's like hundreds of people that have done better reviews than I have, and I don't know, it's kind of like, too, do I really want to tackle this? I mean, there's so much to get into here, but needless to say, I have signed on to do this one, so we'll see if this gives me some courage for some other major films. Alright guys, so I think you probably know who was in this one, but just to refresh your memory, we've got Kevin Costner, Mary McDonnell, Greene, Rodney A. Grant, Robert Pastorelli, Tom Pierce, Tom Everett, Tantu Cardinal, Jimmy Herman, Floyd Red Crow Westerman, Charles Rocket, Larry Joshua, and Margie Chaikin. Okay, directed by the one and only Kevin Costner. Music was by the dearly beloved by me, John Barry. Cinematography, Dean Semler. Writing, Michael Blake. He also wrote the novel that this film is based on. Editor, Neil Travis. Executive producers, etc., Jake Eberts, Kevin Costner, and Jim Wilson. Okay, so I'm jumping right into performances right now. Kevin Costner. This is going to be difficult, so bear with me because these are huge things to like even review. Alright, Kevin Costner, felt on the whole he did a pretty good job. I did. Sorry, that's for the directing section. Okay. Yeah, I felt like his acting was pretty good, especially considering that he directed himself and this was his first time directing himself. Could have been so much worse. You know, there's like people that are playing the lead that a lot of times direct themselves would just like use the fact that they're directing themselves to do whatever they want and nobody can tell them anything, and a lot of times they'll completely bomb. I didn't feel like he did that. I felt like he gave a really good performance. There was a couple things about it I didn't really like. There was a couple things that, a couple scenes that were like really wooden, and I'm like, come on, you can get there, but he didn't. So, on the whole, good performance. Yes, really good performance. Mary McDonnell, I felt like she was pretty good. I felt like she was better than a lot of actresses they could have gotten to play this because she's not just your typical beautiful girl who happens to have been stuck in the woods with Indians. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she was a little more realistic. So, I really, really appreciate that. I thought she did a good on the whole, but I feel like a lot of her dialogue was kind of This has nothing really to do with it, but her character's hair is like everywhere the entire film. I'm like, do you not own a brush? I know you're living in an Indian community, but then you're sitting there and the lady's brushing her hair with something and she walks out the tent and it's like a fro again. I'm like, seriously. I don't know. I'm so creepy. That kind of bugged me a little bit. I know she had no control over that, though. So, moving on. I thought she was solid on the whole. I did. Everybody else in this cast was great. I did want to make special notes of two people, though, and that is Greene and Rodney A. Grant. Both of these guys were stellar. I really thought they were great. Especially Greene. Oh yeah, he was good. He was. And he wasn't just like your typical like Indian, like Hal, you know, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, he was great. He was just perfect for me. So was Rodney A. Grant. They were both really super. I thought everybody else in this film that I mentioned, great. Great. There were some really good performances here, y'all. Which is going to bring us to the directing by Kevin Costner. I thought he did a pretty good job with his actors. I did. Could have been so much worse. Woo. And especially considering this is his first directing, and he's only 35. So, which for directors is pretty young. So, great. Did want to mention, though, that this film was shot in sequence. Totally really obvious. I guessed it. I was like, I bet you this was shot in sequence. Sure enough, it was. Why are you asking me this? Because the first 20 minutes of the film is literally the most confused thing I think I've ever seen in my life. Like, it is so bad. I mean, it's not really bad, but it's just like, I think I'm witnessing a mental breakdown. And I was, okay, and I didn't know that it was shot in sequence. I learned that after I'd watched the film, but I thought, okay, this is either the very first thing, like the first 20 minutes of the film was either the very first thing that they shot or the very last thing they shot, and they're like, we just don't care anymore. Or either somebody's green as the grass. Dear old Kevin Costner was green as the grass, or whatever. The first 20 minutes of the film, y'all, are literally like one of the craziest, confusing things I've ever seen. I didn't know if I was supposed to laugh. It's just like this huge joke, and everybody in every scene seems so confused that they're even like in the scene, and the cameras are I mean, it's just like it's a hot mess. It is. But if you get in there and you're like, okay, this is going to slide downhill swiftly, which I almost thought that, but I thought, no, it's got to have something good to it. But, because I've heard so many great things about it, but keep on watching. Yeah, Big Wheel keep on turning, that kind of number, because, it does, oh God, it gets so much better, thank goodness. So yeah, I did make a special note of that. Let me see, I have notes everywhere because I couldn't remember anything, and they're kind of not organized, I know. So, I'm going to kind of be all over the place with this. Still kind of doing with directing though, well, and acting too. Kevin says there's this one scene where a character commits suicide by gun. It's in like the first 20 minutes of the film. This is one of those like really confusing parts. So the scene is that this guy unfortunately ends his life by gun, and Kevin hears it, and he's on a wagon, and he turns around, and the look on his face is utterly priceless. He's like, what in the world, what? And you're just like, I'm thinking that too. What are you doing, Kevin? Like, who's directing this movie? I don't know, it's so bad. And I'll give it to Kevin Costner all day long for that first 20 minutes, because the guy, I mean, from everything that I've read, was green as the grass, bless him, in the directing field. So, yes, but he picked it up. Obviously, he won the Oscar for Best Director for that year. So, anyway, the directing, though, moving past all of that, I don't think I have any other huge notes about the directing that was early on. And that first 20 minutes, whoa. It was absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, I'm sorry. The point is that the directing gets so much better as it goes along. And there were so many lovely things about this directing. Camera angles were lovely. I mean, he did a great job. He pulled everybody together. The cast was great. They were motivated. They had chemistry. I mean, I feel like he did an outstanding job, and did it as someone who'd done it many times before. Like, this was quality, seriously. And I thought he did great, especially considering, though, so gutsy of him to take on an enormous project like this for his first directing job ever. And he delivered after that first 20 minutes. So yeah, did any of you guys notice that? Seriously, like, tell me, am I crazy? Because I thought it was pretty funky. Anyway, so I did want to make the comment though of the area, unfortunately, where Kevin Costner did fall down on the job, as he has in many, many, many of his movies. Like almost all the movies I've seen of him, and that's in the romance department. Like, I'm about to choke on my own tongue here, like, bad, like, I don't know, and I don't know if that's Kevin's directing, or if that's Kevin's acting, because the two films that pop to mind first is this one and The Postman, which was, I think, made in 1997. Both of the romance, like, stories and just, like, the way it's done is pretty bad. I'm totally not talking about Michael Blake's writing, because the writing up until, like, when, the big deal, the big, oh, I actually love you kind of scene, was great. It was great. It was absolutely great. But, at that point, you're like, okay, your two characters get together and yada, yada, yada. And I think Michael Bay was kind of like, okay, this is what happens, so you run with it. And Kevin's like, okay. And completely, like, trips and busts his knee on it. I'm not talking like Parents Got here. I'm talking, like, as a critic. Like, okay, here's an example. And I hate to, like, get into all this because a lot of it's, like, personal taste and stuff, but I feel like I need to address it. Kevin Costner comes back from this long, like, journey or something, because I'm not going to give anything away. But he comes back and he hasn't seen his little woman for a while, who is obviously Mary McDonnell, and she thought that, like, she didn't know if he was, like, living or dead or anyway, and so they reunite. I know this sounds so creepy, but is there nothing to be said for just, like, a tender hug, maybe a couple passionate kisses, and just, like, holding each other in your arms and being like, I love you? No. They're, like, eating each other's faces, and they're on the ground. I mean, it is ridiculous. I'm like, dude, if somebody did this in front of me, I would, like, leave. This is so awkward. That's Kevin's idea of romance, though. It's just to, like, eat people's faces. No lie. Because that, for, like, all the romance, after, like, all the initial, like, flirtation and stuff is over, that's all that happens, is eat your face. That's it. That's it. I'm just telling you. I don't care for that. So, I think that, there again, what is wrong with all these people in Hollywood, y'all? They don't have any good friends. They don't have any good friends that'll say, hey, pal, this is not the way to go. Anyway, I know, that was kind of personal and kind of yucky and all that kind of stuff, but I felt like I need to address it as a critic because I feel like everything else in the directing was great except for that, which I feel like he totally botched. Botched with a capital B. So, if you're looking for, like, this great romance, you'll get one up until, like, the part where they actually, like, admit they have feelings for each other, and then from there it just goes downhill. Badly. Just letting you know. So, moving on, let's get into the cinematography by Dean Semler. Oh, Dean Semler. Wow. Yes. 10. There were so many beautiful scenes in this film. So many. Lighting was great. Feel, colors, all this, great. And some of the shots that he was able to capture, and I think he and Kevin, working together, were able to capture, holy mackerel, great. They had, like, this massive buffalo scene where they had, like, thousands and thousands of buffalo on a ranch, and they would shoot, like, they could only get the herd to stampede once a day, and so they shot for, like, 2 weeks. Then they got, like, 14 takes of it, but the way they were able to capture all of that and everything, I mean, this is a beast, y'all, for the director and cinematographer. I'm just going to tell you, it is a beast, because this whole project was, how do you get this stuff on film? Like, how do you execute? And, it's 1990, okay? Like, special effects haven't really come along, and if you do something like that, it's going to be so obvious that it's fake that nobody's going to buy it. So you have to either capture it or leave it out. And they got it. Yay, Dean Semler. Dean Semler has literally worked on everything. He did cinematography for In the Land of Blood and Honey. He did it for the recent movie that just came out, Parental Guidance. He's done it for, I can't name you everything, but, like, if you go to IMDb and scroll his list, you'll be like, yes, I know all of his movies. It's ridiculous. Well, not all of them, but almost all of them. So he's had his hands in a lot of really good stuff. Writing. Michael Blake. Yes. Okay, here's what I want to say. Dear Michael Blake, comes to Kevin and comes to Hollywood and all that, is pitching his screenplay to various people. Kevin gets a hold of it. Kevin's like, I dig this. This is great. But I don't think it's going to work out as well unless we can adapt it from a novel. Michael Blake is a total, like, great dude. And that's all I gotta say. And turns the thing into a novel. And Kevin's like, yes, now turn it back into a screenplay. Michael Blake turns it back into a screenplay. Not only did he crush with the novel, which I've not read, but I've heard is really good, he crushed with the screenplay. Crushed. And went through all of that just to get his screenplay done. I love the writing for this. I did. Couple cheesy moments, yes. But I thought the writing for this on the whole was great. And I loved the story. And I loved everything about it. So, yeah. Oh, God, Michael Blake. Come on. Great. Really great job. And, guys, this is why this movie is so iconic. Because even if you don't really like the movie, I think you have to give it to these people who are, like, just 10s. Like, you know, Kevin, minus the romance and the first 20 minutes, 10. You know, as far as directing. Like, all these people are just like, and Dean similar. Woo, ridiculous. Like, everybody just showed up and was like, let's do this. Jumping into the editing for this, guys, I thought the editing was pretty good on the whole. The film is like, I want to say, like, it's between 2.5 hours and 3 hours long. Like, it is a long movie. But, I felt like on the whole it was good. The first, say, hour and a half, great. Pacing is perfect. However, after a certain event happens between our two love interests, Kevin Costner and Mary McDonnell, which I'm not going to spoil anything, but a certain thing happens and it all kind of declines from there. Not as far as editing, just like, okay, we got to pick this up. Like, the whole thing's going in. I don't know, the dialogue faltered a little bit, not necessarily Michael Blake's fault, but I just felt like it just kind of, I don't know, it did get a little monotonous, and I'm like, okay, cut out like maybe 10 minutes and you'll be back on track. Like, it's not like the movie goes up and the movie just stays down. Like, it goes up and then it goes down a little bit, and then it goes back up, you know, it kind of like up, down, up, down, up, down. So, if you cut out all those downs. But on the whole, I'm going to give it to Neil Travis. Good job. Really good job. And with all the footage they captured, y'all, I can't even tell you how many, like, feet of film that I read in the trivia that they captured. Ridiculous amount of film that he had to go through and do. Good job to him. I've kind of saved the best for last year. Well, not the best, because I feel like almost everybody that worked on this movie was doing their best, and it was great. But John Barry, music. Man, the composers, guys, the composers are showing up. They are doing, oh my gosh. Okay, I am a huge John Barry fan. Have been ever since I heard the soundtrack from Somewhere in Time. That was it. I was sold. I was like, I don't know what else this guy has done, but I will like him just for this one soundtrack. Because that is, and Somewhere in Time soundtrack is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I'm getting totally sidetracked. This soundtrack, y'all, is ridiculously epic. It is so good. Oh my word. The music is perfect in every place. The score, cut out the, you know, like, just sit there and stare at a blank screen, and if you played the score with that, oh my word. I had this in my favorite soundtracks, and I just play it, like, constantly with all the other ones. I mean, it's like, it's in my top 20, easily. It's so good. John Barry, the Academy agreed with me. What do you know? John Barry received the Academy Award for Best Original Score for this one. So, yeah, it was legit. It was no joke, and it's so good. If you haven't heard it, you need to hear this one, even aside from the movie. And to me, that is half the test with scores. Is does it stand well with the movie? Yes, but does it stand alone? You know, I don't know. That's just kind of one of my personal things. Okay. I'm going to jump into the Parents Guide, and then I'm going to just kind of talk about, like, a few things that I noticed, like, that were kind of abnormal, not really fitting into a category, and then I'm hopefully going to wrap this up. So, let's get into this Parents Guide. This is not your worst of movies, and I know I'm usually like, this is not your best of movies. I've seen so much worse, y'all. You could do so much worse. No S. Here's what we got in the language category. Obviously, 7 B's, 2 H's, 2 D's, 2 S's, and 2 A's, and 5 religious exclamations. So you judge what you want to do on that. And yeah, so really not that bad for language at all. Moving into the sexual content, Kevin is seen completely naked from the rear. Because he's bathing, and then all this kind of stuff, and then because he's out in the wilderness by himself, and at one point in time he is he's like walking through this thick grass, and he's naked from the front, and like you can see through the thick grass. So be aware of that. Other sexual content, there's no like real other nudity other than we see Mary McDonnell from the waist up, from behind, naked in a sex scene, which is not that graphic, but I mean it's definitely like obvious and everything. And he didn't devote, like Kevin Costner didn't devote as a director a ridiculous amount of time to it, but it was enough. And I've told you what I think of Kevin's romance, so it was just like too much, way too much time devoted to that, if you ask me. So there is a sex scene, some passionate kissing other than that, and then there's this one scene where a certain character sees 2 other characters that are sleeping together, and then he's like, just sits there pretty much watching them, and then he turns away, and I'm like, that's creepy. But anyway, I'm informing you, okay. Drug and alcohol, there's smoking of like peace pipes and that kind of stuff, and there's some liquor, I think, yeah, maybe a little bit of booze, but not really. So, yeah. This is going to be the big category, though, which is probably going to be violence and gore. Okay, well, we open up the movie, like the very first scene, to see Kevin Costner possibly getting his foot removed because it is in such a bad shape. So, yes, and he takes off, they cut off the boot, and then they show like this mangled limb that is really, I mean, it's pretty gory. It didn't bother me, but I know like several people that like would have lost their lunch over it. So yeah. Anyway, it's pretty realistic, but again, it didn't bother me. And I've seen so much worse that I was just like, it wasn't close to either. If that doesn't bother you, like it was from a little distance away, so it wasn't like you could just sit there and like look at every single detail. Anyway. There's obviously, this is kind of a war movie. There's stabbings, there's knifings, there's shootings, there's, a particular scene where some Indians literally sit there and shoot a man to death with their bow and arrows. I mean, they literally just put one into him after the other slowly, and you sit there and hear him screaming with pain and writhing, and he's bleeding out, and I mean, it is not a pleasant thing to watch, but it's not especially gory. It's not like, okay, he's not gushing blood that awfully and stuff like that, so be aware of that. Trying to think of anything else, guys. As I said, other than the, just like war scenes, classic war scenes, nothing really over the top. There is one scene where a certain character gets very, very, very much abused, pretty much. It's not a woman, so that's good. But this person is refusing to give over information that the person who's abusing him wants, so that person that wants the information essentially just like beats him, and the dude is like like bleeding everywhere, and he gets unconscious, and yada yada yada, so he gets unconscious. He becomes unconscious, he falls unconscious, etc. Okay, I can't talk, y'all. I can't. Okay, so be aware of that. I would say not under 12 years of age, just because of all of that, and just because I don't think your 10-year-old is going to sit there for 2.5 to 3 hours through all of this. I mean, it is a doozy, and my goodness, by the end you're just like, I have just run a marathon. Like, whoa. In some ways, I mean, it didn't stretch on forever, but it felt like it did in the latter half. So, parents, I think your problem is going to be, can my kid sit through it, rather than, is it appropriate for my child? So, just be aware of that. Alright, I'm looking at these special notes that I had made here for the end. Huge kudos to the animal trainers and everybody that worked with the two, the horses and everything. I mean, were just perfect. But I'm specifically talking about the wolf scenes. The movie's called Dances with Wolves. I thought it was going to be like, a guy is like, working with Indians, so he's dancing with wolves, like trying to like keep the peace and stuff. No, they actually have like wolves in this movie, or a wolf. Turns out it was wolves, because they used two different wolves for the the shooting and everything, which is pretty obvious, by the way. It's like, okay, you don't look anything like the other one that was playing you just a minute ago, but I give them all slack on that, because, I mean, it's a wolf, okay, and those are impossible to train, so if you got two that are, semi-trained, I don't care what they look like. We're using whichever one of them is ready to go that particular day. We get around a budget here. So, yeah. That was great, but I'm just saying, though, that the wolves and everything were just perfect. I mean, I'm like, how in the world do you get them to just be perfect? I mean, everything was perfect. There was one particular incident, which actually is in the film, that the trainer is like dressed up like Kevin Costner, and you don't ever see the face, so everybody thinks that it's Kevin Costner, but he's running around and kind of roughhousing with the wolves, and the wolf actually like takes a huge bite into his leg, and he kind of like shakes it off or whatever, and then you cut and you see Kevin Costner like playing with the wolf with meat. Well, what actually went down is the wolf actually did bite the trainer's leg and like injured him, and so that's Kevin Costner trying to finish out the scene, because the trainer can't do it anymore, trying to finish out the scene without getting bitten by the wolf. So he's like tossing meat around and stuff. I mean, it's dicey. So yeah, obviously, I mean, Kevin was putting more on the line than what you would probably think. Anyway, great job to all the animal trainers, and I really wanted to address that, because that is super hard, y'all, to deal with animals, and great. Alright, the writing in this was lovely. It was really lovely. It could have been so sappy and done wrong. It was done so good. Michael Blake, great job. Really great job. Romance was botched. And I had this is the quote I have. Romance was completely botched. Kevin does this often in films. I say often in like the 2 or 3 films where he's, had a major say and etc. Mainly this in The Postman. I thought the romance in those two was completely botched. So, yeah. There's this one scene too that I'm mentioning. It's a little nitpicky, but there's this scene where like the Indians are getting attacked, and so they all have guns, which they've just gotten, so they really don't know how to use, but anyway, they're trying to use guns to like defend themselves, and as I said, none of them have like had any training, so they don't really know how to work them, but they're figuring out how to work them, and then this Indian busts through a tent and is trying to attack this woman, and she picks up a gun, like, randomly, like, sporadically, like, oh my gosh, here's a gun, hold it, and then she, like, fires it perfectly, like she's been doing it for 30 years. I'm like, I mean, I know we don't have time to, like, sit there and train her, but, I mean, that's a little, I don't know, that's a little nitpicky, but that stood out to me because I'm like, I'm already having to suspend my disbelief. The fact that you're, like, feeding a wolf with your hand. So, yeah. This film was shot in sequence, extremely obvious because dear old Kevin Costner was feeling out his oats. First 20 minutes, not too good and pretty funky. I don't know what to say about the first. It wasn't really that bad. It was just kind of awkward and weird and like, you know, there's weird where you're like, oh, that's weird, I like that. And then there's weird where you're like, you're making my eye twitch. My eye was twitching so much in the first 20 minutes. It made me laugh though. I was like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. But as somebody who's not a film critic and is just the average person would probably think it's pretty awful. I thought it was hilarious because I'm like, oh, come on, Kevs, you know, I'm rooting for him. I'm like, you can do this, you know, we can get this together. And I was just enjoying it. I thought it was kind of funny. It was very obvious that it was two different wolves that they were using. That's fine, whatever. I'm just saying if, you know, they think they're fooling anybody who weren't. But total slack, cut on that, because, you know, wolves are really hard to deal with, apparently, so, yeah. It kind of all goes downhill after that major event, between the two romance characters. You know, yeah, the buffalo herd scene was ridiculously epic. Oh my stars. It was so fantastic. I'm talking cinematography here. I'm talking directing here. 10 out of 10, epic, so great. I mean, that's almost worth watching the movie just to see that, which it's a ways in. So if you get the movie, like loan it from a pal, and you're like, I don't want to see the movie, I just want to see that scene, skip on and see it, or find it on YouTube. It's really, really something amazing. This is actually the highest grossing Western of all time. What do you know? So, yeah, apparently some people liked it. Oh gosh, the camera angles on this were great. Ooh, loved them. Absolutely loved them. Kevin Costner's directing was super, except for the love scenes, which were awful. But, anyway, back to those camera angles. Perfect. I mean, just like coming in, all these like, stuff that, you know, so non-standard, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, let's just come in from the face and let's, you know, oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So good. The ending for me was kind of It was a little anticlimactic for me, but I guess it was pretty satisfying, y'all. I mean, it could have been worse, so yeah, on the whole, I was pretty satisfied with the ending, I guess. So yeah, guys, I'm giving this film 4 stars out of 5, probably closer to like 4.5 out of 5, just because I do feel like the romance was botched, and I'm giving Kevin a total pass on that first 20 minutes because it made me laugh. But if you're thinking from like a critical point of view, it's not that good. I still enjoyed it. So yeah. Anyway, about 4.5 stars out of 5. For this one for me, guys. Would I watch it again? Yes, I would watch it again. It'll be a while, and I probably will not sit down for the whole, 2.5 to 3 hours, but, if it was on TV or something like that, I'd sit down and watch it. It's one of those movies that, it's like, I'd spend some time on that again. I don't know that I'm gonna, go out and buy it and be like, oh, I'm keeping this forever and I'll watch this over and over. To me, it's not one of those kind of movies because, first of all, it's almost 3 hours long, so hello. Not exactly one you can just pop in, but it was still really good. So, in total summary, and plus, I'm going to say it again, I've said it before, if you've not heard the soundtrack from this, I don't care whether you've seen the movie or not, go hear it. John Barry. That's my recommendation. It's not going to get any clearer than this. Go hear the soundtrack. That's my stamp of approval for Mr. Barry. So yes, guys, I would watch this one again. It's probably just going to be a while. Because it's kind of like, ooh, I've kind of gotten my, fill of Dances with Wolves for about the next, 2-3 years, and then maybe I'll see it again, or at least part of it. Anyway, guys, I bet this one is really long. I never know how long these are actually going to be. And I promise I try and edit them down as much as I possibly can, but I know this one's probably super long. A previous review that I did of Lincoln was ridiculously long, I know, but it's Lincoln, and this is kind of one of those, I feel like the huger, and this is taking more time, but I feel like the huger blockbuster movies are just like, they're going to take time. There's so much to cover. There's so many good things to say about it critically. I mean, you just have to, like, get into everything. Lincoln, wow, beautiful film. You know, you just have to, like, you have to talk about everything about it and what you liked and all this. And there's so many good things to say. Same with this huge epic film. You know, you have to spend some time talking about this. I'm fixing to lose my voice. I think I've talked enough about this one, and I know you're tired of hearing me ramble. So I am so glad that you checked out this review of the 1990 film Dances with Wolves. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.